Hey team, welcome back to Animal Study lesson number 4. This is going to be our final lesson. I'm really proud of you all for hanging in there and trying this. This has been a rough time and I'm really excited about the stuff I've been seeing you produce. So what we've got here on step number 4, or lesson number 4, is that we're going to be double checking the proportions, shapes, angles, values, and placements. We're going to blend everything again, and then we're going to repeat it all. And what I mean by repeat it all is we're going to add another layer of value and then reblend. And then we're going to be adding those super fine detailed highlights as the final part of lesson number 4. So I'm going to show you just a really quick up close picture of what your animal might look like. This is what my animal looked like. And what I mean by detailed eraser lines are those little tiny pieces of hair coming out of his mouth. So that's what I mean by the eraser. So just to review, our lesson 1 was a basic outline. Our lesson number 2, we rechecked the sizes and proportions, and then we added a very faint map out of the values where things were going to be light and dark. And on lesson number 3, we added directional blending, where we took that tissue and blended, and then we added another layer of value to the dark areas and the shadows. Today, we are going to be double checking proportions, shapes, angles, and values, and that is what I'm looking at right now in the drawing. I am noticing, and they are glaring at me, some mistakes that I made. So I've got an area that was too light, so I just darkened it, and now I am sort of looking at how the space between the eye and the ear is too small by quite a bit. So I am not actually going to erase that ear. What I am going to do is add those highlights and the piece of fur there using my eraser. And then instead of actually erasing my incorrect ear, I am going to shade over it. So I filled it in with my pencil, my ear that I did not like, and I am just mapping it out again. I'm double checking the height that I'm putting it at, and I'm laying out a very light basic outline of the ear, kind of like we did in lesson number 1, but I'm just doing it with the ear now. And then I'm going to leave the highlights light, and I'm going to darken in the shadows in that ear. So that's how I'm redoing the ear. I didn't erase the old ear, I just colored over the old ear, adding value to the highlights, and it disappeared. Looks like fur now. And then I mapped it out like a basic outline, and then I'm adding shadows and leaving the highlights alone. When I accidentally blended inside of the shadows, or the highlights rather, I went back in and I erased them. And now I'm just adding some extra fur down below that ear, and I am getting my new ear laid out in place. Now that my new ear is in place, my next step is going to be to blend everything again, kind of like I blended before. So I'm going to grab my tissue and I'm going to go ahead and just start doing some directional blending, where I blend over all of my most recent layer of value so that I can get everything kind of looking smeared together, and I can add details on top of that. Something I would love you to notice, and I'd love you to do as well, is that every time I change the angle of my source image, I also change the angle of my drawing. And that is going to really help me be double checking as I go. All right, so what I'm going to do next is, now that I'm done double checking my proportions, shapes, angles, and values, and I blend it again, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add another layer of value everywhere. And I'm going to get those darks really nice and dark. And then I am going to make sure I'm leaving my highlights alone and redefining them if I need to with an eraser. And then I'll double check again and do directional blending again. So I'm basically going to layer more value, do more blending, and then keep on repeating that process until I really build up value in all the areas where I want value and darkness. So as of right now, what I'm doing is I'm just looking back and forth from my source image and on my drawing, and I'm darkening things up that need to be darker. And as I darken them up, as I add more value, I'm getting more and more detailed. So my first layer of value that I added way back on lesson number 2, I am being a lot more careful and cautious now with the marks I make, because these are going to become potentially final marks. And so For instance, if I see a hair, I am absolutely following along the line of that hair in my source image onto my final. Right now we're in the forehead where I was just working. There is a lot of texture in that forehead. I can clearly see highlights and shadows of this little guy's skin texture on there. So when I add, I do it making little dotty marks the same way I see on his skin. So I just blend it again, and now I'm evaluating, looking back and forth, looking at the skin, and I want to add some detailed highlights. So I cut my eraser in half just then, and what that's going to give me is an eraser that has a really fine, super sharp edge. And I'm going to be pulling out some new highlights now. And with those new highlights, what I'm doing is I'm using that sharp edge of the eraser. So if I see little fine white hairs on my little guy's face, I am making those fine white hairs on my drawing, and I'm doing them by just cutting in tiny sharp hairs. And so if the hair is like, I'm mimicking what I see in the source image. So if I see like a twinkling piece of skin that looks like it's kind of like shiny and glossy, I am gonna pull that tiny mark on the skin out using that fine eraser. If I see a slim little white hair poking out off the animal's face that's in a specific angle, or if it's slightly wavy, I'm going to do that same mark on my drawing because I want to mimic what I'm seeing on the picture. And that's what I'm going to do. And you can see I'm going back and forth, and I'm picking an area to work in from the source image, and then I'm going in and I'm adding highlights now with the eraser, little dabbing highlights on the forehead where the skin looks almost like shimmering and glistening. So I'm making shimmering, glistering little dots there on his forehead. And same thing with the erratic, wiry hairs. I am pulling them out of the background there by making wiry little marks. And I'm going to keep repeating, blending, adding more value, blending, adding more value, blending, adding more value, adding highlights. I'm reaching a point in my drawing now where I'm feeling okay with how it looks. I'm starting to need a break, so I'm going to take a break, and I will come back like after my next meal or with a set of fresh eyes tomorrow morning, and that is when I'm going to just take one last look, add more value again, blend again, go in and add those final highlights, and then I'm going to ultimately be signing my name. When I sign my name on this work, after I've taken a break and revisited it, I am going to sign my name in a place that doesn't distract from the work. So I don't want people to notice my name more than they notice the artwork. So I'm going to make my name small, but not so small that it's distracting. And I'm probably going to draw it down there on the bottom of the monkey's head. All right, so what we are seeing here is my final product. My name is signed down there on the right below his head. It is not distracting. I wrote it in cursive, which I think looks nice when I'm signing my name to work. I can see mistakes here. I can see things that I don't love here and that don't look great here. But what I'm really happy with about this is that I finished a drawing and that I got better at drawing as I went. And when I make my next drawing now, after practicing drawing and working out this part of my brain and this part of my hand, what's going to be awesome is that my drawings are only going to get better and better the more I work. So even though this one might not be my favorite, I just got a skill, and there's nothing that can take that away from me. So despite the faults in this, I'm still really, really happy I did it, and I'm proud of myself. All right, I can't wait to see your final drawings, so go ahead and finish them up and then put them in that doc so I can see them. Have fun.